Hey there, I made a video a couple videos ago about how I like to use this particular interface in C Sharp to make pagination easier, particularly the async enumerable interface. And what I wanted to do was I wanted to make another video kind of in that same vein, but highlighting a functionality or a feature that exists in JavaScript that I don't see a ton of people use a lot, which is being able to implement your own iterables or your own iterators, or even use a generator construct to be able to basically do kind of the same thing, but do it in JavaScript instead of doing it in C Sharp. And so I particularly want to highlight this idea of generator, which is essentially, a function where you can yield up values using the yield keyword. You can even use a particular feature of yield star, which allows you to not only have a generator function, but then to have that generator delegate to another iterable or another generator within that generator, so you can get really, really fancy with it. But what I want to highlight is a particular use case for doing pagination. So in this particular example, what I'm doing is I am talking to the Microsoft Graph API, and you can kind of ignore this boilerplate code here, which is basically just helping me uh, authorize or authenticate to the Microsoft Graph API. But what I want to do is I want to actually have a method on this MS Graph object that I'm returning here that allows me to get all the users that are in my Active Directory or in my intra ID, I guess, directory now, since they renamed it. And so the way I can do this is I can actually have this object have a function on it that is a generator function. And that will allow me to basically do an async iterable so that I can for await const over it. So let me show you what I'm after. So let's go ahead and go back to my main entry point file here. And so what I'm doing here is I'm creating this graph object, and this graph object is essentially going to act like a client against the Microsoft Graph API. And so what I want to be able to do is I want to be able to do something like a for loop where you might say for const user of users, right? But I want to be able to do this asynchronously, and I want to be able to grab kind of a page of users at a time. And I could, of course, write a do while loop or a while loop and do all this pagination here in line. But I think it'd be really nice if that is kind of all abstracted away behind the scenes, behind this generator function, and where this generator isn't necessarily going to grab all the users at once and load them up. It's going to do it on each iterative call, bring down a page so that I can do some work with that page and then move on to the next page. So let me go ahead and show you kind of the end state I'm after here. So the end state I'm after here is I want to be able to do something like a for await loop. So that's going to look like a for await const user of graph, and then I want to be able to have some method that's a generator function that's called get users. And ideally this will take a page size so that I can kind of make it configurable how many users per page I want to be able to grab. But then what I want to do is I want to just be able to say console.log, let's say retrieved user, and then we'll print the user's display name and the user's ID like that. Now that method or that function, that generator function, doesn't exist yet. So let's go back to that MS Graph file and let's implement it. So down here at the bottom, let me make us some room here so we're not hugging the bottom of the screen. So let's implement a function on this object that we're going to return that's going to be async, right? Because this is going to be an asynchronous iterable. If we wanted it to just be an iterable, then we would just do function star, right? And all of these the iteration protocol, the iterators, a generator, it's all this idea that you can basically construct your own things that you can iterate over, that you can loop over, that you can use the spreader operator against, or you can use a for await loop over. So let's go ahead and do an asynchronous function. And the way we define a generator function is we have to put that star, that asterisk right there. And then we're going to say, this is my function. Now in here, what I need to do is I need to actually do that pagination logic that you would normally do in this type of a situation where an API is returning more than one thing, right? Or allows you to return pages of things. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and full disclosure, none of this is stuff I'm figuring out on the fly. This is all something that I have thought about and worked through, and so now I'm presenting it to you. So I do have some reference code over here that I'm looking at. But what we're going to do is we're going to come here and we're going to say, okay, the first thing we're going to do is we need a token, because we need to obviously authenticate against the Microsoft Graph API. So we'll go ahead and get that using that helper function up above. We'll get our access token. And then we're going to do let URL, and that URL is going to be equal to the endpoint that we need to hit on the Microsoft Graph API to actually get users. If you're not familiar with the API, it's not a big deal. That's not really the point of this video. The point of the video is just to show the benefit of being able to use these generator functions. So I'm going to have a couple query params that I'm going to pass here. Top is what the Microsoft Graph API uses for declaring the size of your pages. How many items should you get at one time? In this case, I'm going to make this configurable. So I'm going to call this page size. And I need to use backticks. And I need to actually add a variable called page size, or a argument called page size. That's going to be a number. And we're just going to default that to 1 for now. That's probably not what you would really do, but for this case, that's what we're going to do. And then I'm going to actually just limit this to just select the ID and the display name. Cool. And now we're going to go down here and we're actually going to do our pagination logic. So this is where that yield keyword comes into play. And we are going to say while there's a URL. And inside here, we're going to say the first thing we want to do is we want to actually get a response. So we'll say response equals await fetch, give it our URL. And then we also need to give it our headers so that it has that access token that we got up above. So we'll say headers, yep, just like that. Thank you, Copilot. And if the response is not okay, we'll just throw an error for now. That's probably not what you'd want to actually do in this case. You'd probably, ideally, instead of just returning users, you'd probably return like a result for each page that you collect, and then you could handle when the result is good and when the result is bad when you're looping over it. But for these purposes, this will work. The next thing we'll do is we'll go ahead and get our data. So we'll say data, and we'll await that JSON, and we'll scroll down here a little bit again so we're not hugging the screen. And then the next thing we need to do is we need to reset that URL value. So the way the Microsoft Graph API indicates that there's another page of data is they do exactly what Copilot is saying here is they return a particular property that's at odata.nextLink, which is literally just a properly constructed URL that gets the next page of data. And it has all the query parameters that are given to it in the initial URL passed to build that URL. So you can literally just collect that next link and then use it for your next request. So that's what we'll do here. We'll say data, we'll say data is at odata.nextLink. And we don't need null because if it's undefined, then it'll still break out of here. So we'll say, we're going to yield data dot value, and in this case value is actually an array, so this will actually yield up an array of users. But what we really want to do is we kind of want to flatten this out, and we want to make this seem, even though we're paging through this, we actually want to just make this seem like one single flat array of users. That way we don't have to do any kind of weird nested loops in that index.ts file I showed you earlier. So that's where we're going to use the yield star functionality. And if you go to the MDN docs on this, they'll actually talk you through what that yield star does. But basically what it does is what's a good way to put this? It delegates to another iterable object, right? So our generator function is producing an iterable object that we can iterate over. But inside that generator, if we have another iterable object that we want to delegate to and say, okay, hey, inside here, when we're yielding on an iteration, we actually, during this particular iteration, we want to delegate to another iterable at that point in time. And so that's what I'm doing in my code here, is I'm saying, okay, yes, this is an iterable. We're returning an iterable object using this generator function construct. But on each iteration, I want to delegate to the received array of users and yield those up, return those up as part of this iteration. So with that in place now, we should be able to, let's move that white space. We should be able now to actually run our index.ts file, which you can see now there's no more errors, it's not complaining about anything. And we should be able to now just retrieve each user one at a time, right? We're going to make an API call because the page size is just one, and we'll iterate through and we'll print out each user that we've gotten. So let's go ahead and open a new tab here, just so we can keep things a little easier. Make this a little bigger. We'll CD into software projects, pagination, and we're going to do npm run start. And as long as I've done everything right, we should see some users printed out. Looks like it failed to fetch the users. Well, that's not what we want. So let's go ahead and go back to to our MS graph file. And let's figure out why it's failing to get the users. Oh, it's because right here, I need to add a $sign. That's just how the MS Graph API works. That's my fault. Now let's go back here. We'll run npm run start, and this time we should hopefully see individual users, and you can kind of see it yield up one at a time, right? So if we were actually to change our page size to, let's say we change our page size to 2, now we're going to get 2 users on each iteration. So it should print a little faster here. Nice, right? And so I think you can see, right, the power in this, right? This maybe you don't have to use this for just doing asynchronous work like this where you want to page through something. Maybe you just want to have an actual object that you iterate over for some reason. But the nice thing here is the ergonomics, right, that this iterable construct gives you makes your life as the developer or the programmer a little bit easier. It's less things that you have to manage. And you can probably imagine a world where, especially like within this case of an API, where the paging construct that you're going to use is probably going to be pretty similar across the different API endpoints that you're going to hit. You could likely have just a paging functionality, right, where it yields up different types of objects, but the inner workings of that pagination are the same, right? We're going to get the initial response, we're going to check if there's a next link, we're going to set that URL, and then we're going to yield up whatever data we got back until we no longer have a next link. And you could probably use something like TypeScript generics to make that nice and pretty, and you could just have some wrapper methods that are like get user, which then calls get page, right? So you can see how this kind of spider webs out and can kind of make your life easier. But I don't see a ton of people talking too often enough, I feel like, about this idea of creating your own iterators, creating your own generators to leverage some of that really nice iteration functionality that you get with arrays, for example, in JavaScript, where you can for const of something, you can for in something, you can do something like a spread operation with an array. You can construct these same things, but for your particular needs and your particular use cases. So I hope you found this helpful. I hope it kind of piques your interest in maybe thinking about, I wonder if I could use a generator to solve this problem, or I wonder if I could use a generator here to make somebody else who's using my code maybe easier to work with. So if you found this helpful, leave a comment, find me on Bluesky. Let me know what you thought. And if there's something that maybe I don't understand well enough about iterators or generators or something I've misstated, let me know as well. I'm learning just like you, so I'd love to hear what you guys have to think. All right, well, I will see you in another video or another short or another stream. Until then, I hope you guys are having a great day. Bye.